Hey everybody,
Hello.
how's it going?
Pretty good. How you doing, Paul?
Doing well, doing well. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah.
Got a lot to talk about today with Prime.
Yeah, so for those of you that don't know, maybe you're just devs getting started with the Alexa platform, Prime Day is a day and a half of really great sales on Amazon, and we think it's going to be a really important day for skill developers as well, because all these people are going to be getting new devices, and it's your chance to really showcase your skill to brand new customers.
Yep.
Or customers are adding more devices to their home, and maybe something that they used previously they've been reminded of.
All right.
So a few things that we wanted to highlight were being sure that you remove friction from your skill, so making it very easy to use, memorable. Another thing is think about engagement. How do you get those users that you're gonna are gonna discover your skill today?
Yep.
And keep them coming back all the time.
Yep.
And finally, really think about your voice UI. So
Yep,
that's what
yep.
we're here for. We're part of the Alexa team, and we think about voice and voice user interfaces all day long, and voice user experience. So really think about that in the context of Prime Day. How can you delight these new customers? How can you delight your old customers that might be remembering your skill and coming back after a week or a month?
That's cool. And so one thing I'd like to say about this, what we're about to do here over the next hour or two,
Yep.
is there's a lot of stuff we're going to be talking about. And so everything will have links. You'll be able to go read more detail. We really want to make sure you see the context, like understand what it's about, and then we can, you can dive in as deep as you want. Each of these slides could probably be an hour talk by itself.
Yep. Yeah. So it's an action packed.
It's not really a slide even,
No.
right? But each of these points, I guess.
Yeah, it's going to be an action-packed 90 to 120 minutes.
Yeah.
We have multiple people on chat that are here to help, so feel free to ask any questions on chat. And we won't be able to see it because we're doing this, but we've got some lovely people helping us out as well.
All right, cool.
All right, so
let's dive in.
let's start with the first point.
Okay, so voice design. One of the things that often happens with building an Alexa skill is there's this first moment where you're like, this is super cool. I have an API, I voice enable the API, and I call things, and you get something working really fast. And if you don't think about the design aspects, you end up with something that it's fun to get working, but it's actually not a great user experience. And so we see a lot of times that developers will just dig in and then have to come back and then rethink it and go again. So we spend a lot of time saying design first, design first, design first. And it also is, it seems like it's one of those things that's very simple because we all speak to each
Yep.
other. We all have conversations. We understand what is a good conversation. And we even understand, I think, what is decent UI with web and mobile and so forth. But there are some subtle things from web and mobile that you just shouldn't bring. And there are some things that are really best practices that you should continue to bring.
Yeah, and I like to tell people that they're experts at having conversations because they have dozens of conversations every day.
Yeah.
But if you had to write a document on what makes a good conversation, most of us would be stumped unless you're a linguist or you really thought about this, or a novelist or a podcaster, right? Or an interviewer. When you're collecting data, you want to act like an interviewer and make it engaging and keep a conversation going. You don't want to feel like a cop that's interrogating someone.
Yeah, so in all of that, there's what is the point, right? What is the purpose of your skill? And one of the key things there is friction and speed. So let's hear a little bit from Gary Vee from VaynerMedia.
Yep.
And he'll talk about speed and friction.
What's the future of this? Here's what I would say. I was an early pusher of apps and texting is going to win. Emojis are going to win. I remember emojis. I wish I was doing my vlog back then. When that kind of first hit the scene, I'm like, of course it's going to win because one press of a button of a smiley face is faster than colon.
Yep.
And, it's just speed. So what's the future of this? There are things that you're doing now that will blow you away that you'll be doing only in voice. I genuinely think I'm going to poke my head out of the shower 3 times per shower saying, tell Babin to meet me on 19th Street. Alexa, you're going to be, it's going to be unbelievable speed utility. And I think, for example, texting will decline in the future because of Alexa, because it's going to be faster to say it and get that person to know the information than it is to grab the phone and do it.
So let's talk about a couple of those points specifically. When you're thinking about voice first, there's one piece which is, hey, we're going to reduce some friction.
Yep.
So let me give you a couple examples. One is a timer. It's a super simple thing. You just say, Alexa, set a timer for 2 minutes. And I would have never said to you, man, going to my microwave and hitting the 2 button is just too hard. We got to solve that problem. And it turns out I never do it anymore because it's just way easier to do with voice. And there are a few of these. There's ambient sounds like open thunderstorm sounds, right? The thing is, I'm further away than my hands will reach. Like I don't have my phone next to me or my laptop next to me, and I don't want to turn it on, log in, get in, and get going. I just want to say, play me some thunderstorms, or find my phone.
Yeah,
that's a good one.
No, it's super helpful, right? Like if you lose your keys or your phone, and you have one of those gizmos on the keychain, you can say, "Hey, find my keys," and it'll start beeping from under the couch. Or if you have a dog like mine, from inside her bed.
From her belly. That's awesome. Big Sky is a good one for weather. They give you like this hour by hour weather and see what's going on. So anyway, there's a lot of these like get in, get out, reduce your friction. And I think that's a good litmus test for is it worth doing in voice. If it doesn't actually save you any time or make it any easier, that's maybe not a good choice. Or if it's not super entertaining, I think there's a bunch of others that will take a lot of time, but they're about being entertainment.
Yeah, and I think one that's like really popular and used a lot is in smart home. So having to use multiple apps to do something and then just being able to shout out a single command, that's a real reduction of friction, right?
Totally. All right, so let's hear from Mark and Bob at VoiceXP about how they think about doing design up front. All right. Where are we at? 201. All right, I'm just going to manually fire off.
Lost
this talk.
Before we write any code, we go through a conversation design process first and document that flow. And you can do it a number of different ways, but it's so critical to have that experience design before you write the code and get user feedback. I mean, this is the same thing that we've always talked about in a product-centric world is, have you run that past the user first and gotten their feedback? Are you creating and developing something that they really want? And asking them, how are you going to use this, will help the developer provide a better quality product, because the developer has tunnel vision.
Sure.
They don't know how a user might ask this question or want to get that information, and so to conduct those interviews and write it down before you write any code is really important. It's the simple thing of plan before you build.
Yeah, and it is an iterative approach, but what surprised me is just how much time, if you were to break up a project into 3 basic categories, the design and the development and then all the other stuff, including deployment, then it's about 40, 20. There is a lot that goes into the design.
Okay, so big part of this is to keep it conversational. They can be very fast call and response kind of experiences, but always be conversational. So let's sort of dig into this. If we look at
and I don't think anyone would ever disagree with saying you need to design things, right?
Yeah, sure.
That's a very basic point, but let's get into how and like the actual way of doing it.
So there's a few different pieces. When you think about design in general, we'll start talking about situational design here. When you talk about design in general, there's affordances. There's ways that you interact with the world. So when you design buildings, you design the doors and you have push and pull. And if you design that affordance for push and pull improperly, you can see how it gets really annoying really fast. But that's the same thing in digital too. There's affordances for a button, and if the button is pressed or not pressed, and so forth.
Yeah,
so
every time you've walked out of a bathroom that you had to pull the door after you wash your hands, you're like, why?
Why is this wrong? Right, exactly. So there's the sense of affordances. In voice, the affordances are utterances, intents, and slots. These are the things that people say, and then the prompts, how Alexa responds and continues the conversation. So one fundamental thing to think about is an utterance, which is what the customer says, and then an intent, which is what the Alexa service sends you back. It says, the person said this thing, what they meant was this.
Yep.
And now your code can take it and handle it. And then within all of that, there's this concept of a slot, which is like a variable or something like that. So if I said something like, I want to go to the park versus I want to go to the movies, you could imagine that there's a location or a destination slot there
Yep.
where you could fill it in with movies or park or whatnot. So your code would know that you're dealing with an intent that is go somewhere and a slot for movie or park. And you can say it all sorts of ways. I want to go to the movies. Let's go to the movies. The movies is where I want to be.
Yep.
Let's go play at the park. Right. There's a bunch of utterances that you could use.
And the actual payload there is movies, right? Like the value that you care about is movies, where you want to go, not how specifically the user said it.
Exactly. And so a part of this is allowing you to be adaptable. So in web or mobile design, the design process in large part is saying, what can I do to make this very understandable for customers? And so you pick a label, like you pick a label for the OK button.
Yep.
And in this world, you have utterances that say things like, OK, fine, next, continue, carry on, whatever might be appropriate for OK
Yep.
in your world. A feature that you have that really helps you with this is called entity resolution. So if you look up entity resolution, you can learn about how synonyms work.
Yeah, and one that I like there, or the example that I like there, is there's many hues of colors, right? So
Okay.
green, jade, chartreuse are
Yep.
all in the family of green, but maybe my skill or whatever I'm doing doesn't really care about the specifics. It's just green, but I want to let the user say whatever they want.
Right.
So if they say
all the greens.
yeah, my favorite color is
Seafoam.
exactly, then I'm just gonna say like, all right, cool, green.
Right.
And then Here you go.
Right. So the entity resolution feature will take Seafoam and green
Yep.
and send it to your code. So you're like, oh, cool, that's green. And what's cool about that is you can even say, you can say nothing. You can just take the value and go on your way and do what you're doing. Or you could say, oh, Seafoam is awesome. So you could confirm that you
Yeah.
heard what they said the way they said it. The other thing you could do is if they say I like Seafoam, you could say, oh, green is great. So you could basically be teaching them the kinds of words you want. So you can
Yeah.
either relate to them, or you could teach them the new way, or either way.
Or if you find a color, because seafoam's kind of like between blue and green, right? Like
Okay.
you could find a color that's right in the middle of the two, and you're like, I don't know if this is one or the other.
Yep.
And you could say, oh, did you mean blue or green, right?
Right.
And then you're disambiguating that value that could have been confusing, but all of this dialogue management, entity resolution, you can just let the Alexa service do
Yep.
for you.
Yep. So in that case, you'll actually get back. They said Seafoam. They could have meant blue, and they could have meant green. And because you have two choices, you can now easily disambiguate that.
Yep.
Cool. All right, so let's go to the next one. So another one is about being personal. You want to make sure that it's tailored to the customer, and they're tailored in a few different ways. One is you want to have the sense of variety. So if you come to the skill the very first time, you're probably going to be a little more verbose and say, this is what we're about, this is what you can do here. If you come back the third, fourth, 100th time, you probably want to be kind of snappy. And so that's a subtle kind of personalization. It's a tailoring to what you've been doing. But it's important because, and starkly different, I suppose, than mobile and web. Because on mobile and web, what you're trying to do is make those pages really easy to learn.
Yep.
I guess, frankly, that's what you're doing in design in general, is making it really easy to learn. But in mobile and web, your tool for doing that is consistency, because you want to be able to skim and ignore all the stuff you don't need and get right to the thing you do need.
Yep. So like you don't want to change the color of things just because.
Now they have to relearn it.
Yeah, people will be confused. Like, why is this green now? It
Right.
used to be red.
You break their skimmability
Yep.
of this. In voice, you want variety because you can't skim. There is no skip forward and ahead and all that kind of stuff. In fact, what happens a lot of times when you're typing up prompts, they will sound great. Like I got it nice and tight and it's light.
When you read it, right?
You read it doesn't work.
In your head.
Yeah. When you hear it out loud, you're like, yeah, that's not what I want. Because when you write, you very naturally write the first sentence, which is what it's about, and then they have a bunch of supporting points, and then you're right. In voice, you just kind of got to lay it out.
Yep. And all of this is the underpinnings of a new concept that we're starting to explore, which is situational design.
Yep.
Basing the way you're designing your voice interactions in depending on what situation your user is in. And this is the concept that you came up with, and it's something that our team is going to start exploring and doing more with. And I find it super, super exciting. Like, it's really early days for voice. And one of the marks of the early days is like finding these new tools and
New patterns,
ways of thinking, right? Of to achieve a good, concrete design and good experience.
Yeah. So the idea there and what helps you get this variety while still being learnable is the basic understanding that you say, I take what the user said and I take the current situation. It's my first time, it's my 5th time, it's my 100th time. It's a new level. You've unlocked some cool new content, whatever it is. So what they said plus the situation, and now you can compose the response.
Yep.
That's appropriate for that.
Yeah.
Cool. Another piece of this being personal is memory. Because if you forget what was going on the whole time, then it gets very repetitive and so forth. So having this sense of memory is kind of key to that. So what we can do is you can say, well, from session to session to session, you can remember what happened last time so you don't have to start the game over, for example. That's there. Or even within a session, you can do like an AFRA where you could say, before they were talking about one topic, and then you can reference, how was that?
Yeah.
Right?
Or like, has Guillermo del Toro ever won an Oscar? And then the next question is, what about Brad Pitt?
Right.
You don't say Oscar or won or anything, but you know that's
You still know what's going on.
It's in context, right? And
Right.
memory is a key piece of context.
Cool. All right. So that's something good to go look up to. So the next one is about being available. So,
And I want to call out the fact that at the bottom of your screen, there's links for every point we're making to find more information. And obviously, our Twitter handles are overlaid on top of us. And for once, we got them right on top of the right person. So if you want to reach out to us, you can reach us there. You can also chat with the people on Twitch chat.
Yep.
What we're trying to do today is expose you to a bunch of information that we have, invite you to explore a little bit more and at your own pace.
great. So availability. One of the challenges with voice is that there's nothing to see.
Yep.
And so it's with a normal web app or a mobile app, you can sort of look at it and be like, oh, I kind of get what it does, right? And so that's a challenge with voice, but it also has a benefit. And the benefit is you can say all sorts of things and it still works. So here's a specific example. Let's say I'm building a banking app.
Okay.
And in that banking app, I want to surface to you a routing number.
Mm-hmm.
So in a web app or a mobile app, the best design practice for sure would be to bury that thing. Go menu, routing number. You have to work really hard on your information architecture and so forth. But that's just not worth Ring 0 UI. It's not worth using up those pixels at the top level. And even beyond the pixels, it's not worth the conceptual overload. Right? You just can't have too much on a screen. With voice, it would actually be wrong to have to go menu, routing number.
Option 0, option 1, option B,
right.
routing number.
Right.
We don't speak like that. That's not a conversation.
Totally. You just say, hey, I want to figure out my routing number, right?
Yep.
So what you do is you basically take your information architecture, which had all of your nodes, you just flip it on its side, and now you can have a really nice wide top-level UI where you have routing number and all the other things that your skill can perform.
And you don't have this limitation. Like any screen you're designing for, it could be a giant movie theater screen. It only has so many pixels on it.
Yep.
So you have that limitation. You're going to end up having to put things behind things. Voice doesn't have that. There's no pixels or endless pixels, however you want to think about it.
And it doesn't conceptually overload either. So the key there is that starts to allow for serendipitous discovery.
Yep.
They can just try things, and it's always delighting when it works. And it also allows you to do things like put stubs of features in. Like maybe someday I'll add routing number, but I don't think it's important right now. And if a lot of people start asking for the routing number, you can say, oh, thanks, we'll let our engineers know about that. We'll let the team know you want that. And then you add it, and then later, with the situational design, they say open the skill, and you say, hey, you wanted this routing number feature, we have it now.
Yeah,
Go check it out.
That's where like collecting more data for your users, even if they're anonymous, right? Like even if you don't have account linking, but you have a unique ID for your user, you can then say, oh, they were looking for this, or they try to do this, and tailor responses to them.
Cool. All right. The next component of situational design is to be relatable. And conversation is about cooperation. Like it's really a combination of the person and the skill trying to achieve something together. It's kind of like when two people have a conversation, you're trying to cooperate. If you're not, it becomes a lecture or something else. It's not about cooperation anymore. And so one of the things, and another part of this is web pages and mobile apps aren't really about cooperation. They're about, I'm going to tell you what to do so you can get the job done, right? And so an example of that would be like a wizard. So you would say, I'm going to do this stuff, I'm going to do this stuff, I'm going to do this stuff, and now I can get an answer.
Okay.
And you use your UI metaphors to put the person effectively on rails, right? Like, here's the thing, here's the affordances you have available right now,
Yep.
and let's get it done.
And the way I think about that is,
Okay.
as a designer for something that's graphical, I have complete control. Like, I know what buttons are on the screen at any given time. No, the user can't suddenly say, like, I want another button here. Like, that's just, even if it's Xcode or with the most complicated IDE in the universe, or PowerPoint or whatever, it's someone made the decision of these buttons go here under this thing. With voice, you don't have that control. You put your controls, but the user has a lot of liberty to say whatever they want whenever they want, right?
Right. They get help or whatever. So let's go through an example there. Let's say I'm planning a trip. And I want to say something simple like, I want to plan a trip, and Alexa would say, where do you want to go? And I'd say, I want to go to Portland. What do you want to do? I want to go kayaking, right? That works, and that would work in a wizard. Boom, boom, boom. But then it comes to the point where you say, I want to over-answer.
Yep.
So the person could say, Alexa would say, or sorry, the person would say, I want to go on a trip. Alexa would say, cool, where do you want to go? And you could say something like, I want to go kayaking in Portland. So they just told you the location, but also the activity.
Yep.
And that should be totally fine in voice. Or another one is, where do you want to go? And then they say, I want to go kayaking. I didn't actually give you
Yeah,
the location.
you answered something else, right?
Something else. And so it would be bad to next say, well, what do you want to do when you get there?
Yeah.
Because I just told you I want to go kayaking. So there's a feature called dialogue management. And dialogue management is effectively anytime you have a form to fill out, it will allow you to say, here's the stuff I care about. And there's even stuff they might say that I don't care about, right?
Yep.
If I get it, I'll use it, but if I don't get it, I don't really care. So you just say that, and then Alexa will deal with, let's get all the information in whatever order the person says it most naturally to them.
Yep.
And it'll prompt for the parts that are missing. So it'll help you get the whole thing filled out.
Yep.
And you can just delegate that, or you can control it to whatever level you want to.
Yeah.
So that's how you sort of get the sense of a cooperative experience.
Yeah, and I think if you try to just model something off of a graphical UI, there's a bunch of pitfalls. But if you model it after a conversation,
Yeah.
you're like with a human,
Right.
you're in the right track, like from the get-go.
Yeah, if you take a really high level view of it, if you bring from web and mobile design, if you bring your user empathy with you, but kind of leave the design patterns behind and then pick and choose them very
Yeah.
carefully, you'll probably be okay,
Yeah.
right? And using that human interaction piece is nice. All right, so let's hear from John. He's from Earplay, and he's going to talk about the importance of being relatable.
And I find that that's kind of the fun of sort of VUI and VUX design, is that you're thinking about the VUI in terms of what's being said, what's being captured, how you're routing people. But the VUX in terms of like how you go about presenting it to someone becomes really relevant. It comes down to like just the specific words you're choosing. We will go over and redo our writing over and over again because we're like, oh wait a minute, hold on, it's smoother if we do it this way. I like it's a part of our process is to constantly re-examine what's been written already. And I find too, like sometimes it's worth it, especially working in teams. You've written it, and it takes time to go test and put it out there and experience the full flow. Sometimes we'll just take note cards and like sit across the desk from each other and be like, okay, hey, let me run this by you. How does this sound? And then just immediately feedback it without any code. It saves a lot of time because then you're just focusing on the language and how it hits the ear.
All right, that's cool.
Yep.
So the next piece, we talked about thinking about voice first. We've talked about situational design, and there are links for all of those. The next one that I want to talk about is multimodal.
Yeah, and multimodal is like a weird industry name, right? It doesn't mean anything if you you hear it for first time. What's a mode, and why do I want multiple?
What about multi of them? Yeah. I wish I could think of a better name for it, and it just sort of seems like in the industry the gravity is headed there. Here's the idea. Of course, we're talking about voice first, allowing for ambient computing. It used to be computing at your fingertips, and now it's just computing wherever you are around you. I don't have to have it in my fingertips range. I can be across the room. And you really want to engage all of the senses when you're communicating, right?
Well, maybe not smell, but
it's not so bad. So then the other one is you want to engage your eyesight, something you want to be able to see things and get a sense for what's going on. And so a lot of what we're talking about with multimodal is things like screens.
Yep.
So there's also other things like game buttons and all that, but
And there might be more to come, right? There might be other things we haven't even thought of.
Tactile
about.
pieces and all sorts of things. Like there's a lot of different ways that you can interact with your computing.
Yep.
So in this world where you're thinking voice first and thinking about just sort of natural, conversational, ambient computing, how does a screen play into that? And one of the things we want to think about there is how do you preserve the ability for people to just interact very naturally and in a social, communal kind of a way versus just getting their face stuck in their phone again. And now all of a sudden it's a very personal, private kind of a thing.
And I think you're making a really important distinction there for designers, not even for developers. Like everyone has to think about this: is your relationship to your phone is very personal. It's very rare that you just give someone else your phone or that you're displaying what's on your phone. Like most of the time, that's like just you one-to-one. Right?
There's even special features for that, like your camera is now available pre-lock screen.
Yeah.
So that people can't see anything.
Exactly. Yep. And like your phone can unlock with like bio stuff, like it's super related to you.
Yep.
And even Gary, when he was here, he was asking about like if you could put your phone in you.
Yeah.
But with voice, you just don't have that relationship. The medium is like sound bouncing around in a physical space.
Yeah.
So people can overhear a conversation. People can interrupt a conversation. People can add to a conversation.
And be a part of it.
Yeah.
Like
Take that into account. Like every time my mom uses an Alexa device, she always speaks in plural because there's more people in the room and she wants to include them.
Oh, that's
like,
cool.
We like this or we like that instead of saying, even though it's her opinion, but she's like trying to invite other people. And I noticed that from her and I was like, oh, I should tailor my utterances to also take plurals, not just singulars.
Fascinating. I hadn't thought about that one. So with screens, we have a lot of different, there's Fire TV, the show, the spot. They can be far away. They can be all sorts of different pieces. Yep. So one of the things to think about this is the visual is meant to enhance the conversation. So for example, I might in my office have a whiteboard and I'll scribble stuff. Memo and I are going back and forth making up the outline for this very thing.
Yep.
And if you were just to come in and look at that without any context of the conversation, you'd be like, what is this? But for Memo and I, the outline that we drew on the whiteboard for this talk makes a ton of sense because it was a memory aid for our conversation. And so I think you can think of screens in that way, which is they help you understand information or remember what's going on or keep track with the conversation and so forth. So a simple tactic to do here is just, you can think of your skill and just say, have a welcome screen and a goodbye screen.
Yep.
If you just did that, that would give you a little bit of a flair and a little bit of comfort you'd have with your customers.
And if you're working for in an agency or in a company and someone's pushing back on why would we spend time on putting this on a voice experience, the easiest way to justify it is it's branding, right? It's a good place for you to say, here's my icon, here's who we are. Just a little welcome screen takes a couple minutes to do. And on those premium devices or those different form factors that have a screen, you're going to give a little bit more value to your users, to your customers, and eventually you could say, oh, maybe these devices need a little bit more love, or we're going to keep on our core voice and just use this as a marketing almost piece.
It kind of comes back to that skimmable principle.
Yeah.
Like if you were going to say, welcome to Acme Corp, the best widget maker on the planet, we've got over 500 million satisfied customers. You wouldn't say that in the voice experience because people are like, all right, skip, get ahead. But if it was on the screen, you can just look at it and read it or ignore it, right? You can do your thing.
Yeah, and there's little UI elements on the screen, like hints that'll tell you to do something else that are not available anywhere else.
Yeah. So let's take a look at an example of Panda Rescue. And they do a lot more than what we just described.
Yeah.
Right? We did a welcome and a conclusion. They really get in and do some cool stuff. So let's check them out.
An Echo Show is an Amazon Echo with a screen on it. The experience is still very much voice first because the user needs to understand that the voice is kind of the primary control and the screen on the Echo Show is complementary to the voice experience. Alexa, open Panda Rescue Beta.
Welcome to the Panda Rescue game.
Panda Rescue was a skill that we built for the Alexa Kids Challenge. It is basically an adventure story game for kids where you look after a baby panda that's been rescued from the wild.
When we built Panda Rescue, we knew that there'd be an Echo Show component to it. So from a design perspective, the difference was thinking about which imagery we'd be showing at which moments.
If you're ready to start the game, say ready.
You can definitely create a much more engaging experience for your users if you have some evocative imagery displayed on the Echo Show as well as Alexa's voice. Some of the reviews have been really good. A woman actually said her 9-year-old had played the game all the way through and then had actually cried when they got to the end of the game because the kid couldn't see his little panda Bao Bao anymore. So yeah, it feels good. It feels that work you put into building these skills actually has an effect and it causes people enjoyment.
Yeah, so we covered in the last segment a lot about voice first, situational design, and multimodal, right? And these are really design concepts. But you're probably thinking right now, how do I do all of these things?
Yep.
And we know in chat, a lot of people are asking specifically how to do a bunch of things. So we've got people helping you there, but we also wanted to show you the tools from our perspective and what we think are the first places that you should be exploring and what you should be doing. So we're going to be breaking down these tools into different segments. So the first one is our dev console and command line.
Cool.
So the dev console is part of developer.amazon.com.
Okay.
And that's where you build all your skills. You have a web page. It allows you to create your voice UI. So we call it an interaction model, and you define intents, your utterances, and your slots, basically.
So all those affordances we were talking about before, the voice. Yep.
Correct. And a good way to think about this, which is different from an app or from anything else, is there's a machine learning training data component that really doesn't match to anything else except for like voice. And what you do is you define an intent, which is what did the user mean, and then you give it training data. What are different sentences that the user could use to say that? But it's really important to understand that it's not just verbatim capturing everything that the user could say. You're passing that into a grammar, and it's getting built into a language model. So there's going to be more that the user can say based on the sentences you have there. But like any machine learning interaction, garbage in, garbage out. So if you don't really think about those utterances, they're not going to map to what you think.
Yeah.
So we have a bunch of utterances that are 3 words long, and they all end in the word banana. What you're really teaching the model is I'm looking for sentences that are 3 words long and end in banana, not for any like whatever else you thought you had there.
Yeah.
So really thinking about that, and that's something that we definitely want to be able to help you with in designing, but it's part of stepping out of yourself and how would other people say this?
Yep.
Maybe people with different backgrounds or from different regions. Even in the US, let's not even get into multiple languages, but even in the US, people from the South say things differently from the people from the East Coast or the West Coast or whatnot. So having beta testers and all that is really important for this.
So let's talk about roles there for just a second. There's a lot of parts that go into that for sure. There's the role of the Alexa service, and then the role of you as the skill builder.
Yep.
And so the skill builder, as a skill builder, what you need to do is think of what will my customer say, and when they say it, what do I mean? Like, what are the utterances?
Correct.
And what are the intents?
Correct.
And then the Alexa service handles all of the ASR, automated speech recognition. NLU,
natural language understanding,
and then we'll package that all up and give you the results.
Yes.
Right.
And I think we just said ASR and natural language understanding, and a lot of people like me, when I first started engaging with this, might think that's super hard. Like you need a PhD or you need to be super good with math to work on that, or a linguist.
Yep.
And in this case, no, we build those tools. We build this machine, which is the Alexa voice service, that allow you to do this in a very low friction way of doing it, right? You don't have to do all the hard machine learning part. You just have to provide the training data, and then we give you a nice little JSON object that has the output of all that processing. So I think it's a really cool way to do it, but you definitely have to think about that. We also have the CLI, the ASK.
So that last tool was the new console.
Yeah. And then we have the ASK CLI, and unlike the console, the CLI lets you manage both your voice user interface and your code. So a skill, like any piece of software, if you look at it from 10,000 feet up, you'll see that it's two pieces really. It's got a front end and a back end. The front end is your voice UI, and the back end, in our case, we call an endpoint, and it can be anything that's an HTTPS endpoint. We like to do everything on AWS Lambda, which is a serverless compute service from AWS, and it allows you to just not have to worry about configuring your servers,
deploying computers, and figuring out loads
what kind of
and all
metal
that. Yeah.
I'm running on, and
so you just take your business logic, stick it there,
yes,
hook up your front end, and you can do it all through the CLI.
And the CLI allows you to just run a couple of commands from the command line and just push out, hey, here's my new voice UI, here's my new Lambda. It'll do the whole thing, and then you can even test from the CLI. It's super, super good. It's really convenient. As you progress as a skill developer, it's something that you definitely want to take a look at. Takes about half an hour, 45 minutes to set it up the first time, but it'll literally save you those 45 minutes.
Yeah.
And the next time you use it.
For sure. Yeah.
So
awesome.
It's totally worth it. Obviously, as you build more and more skills, you'll or the complexity of your skills grows, you're going to want more tools. And we have some amazing software development kits, or SDKs, for 3 languages. We have JavaScript, Java, and Python we wanted to have here on screen. It's brand spanking new. It's actually not on our normal GitHub repo. It's on github.com/Alexa Labs, because it's so new. It's technically
Alexa-Labs. Yep.
Alexa-Labs, yes. It's technically in beta, but we've heard the community. People asked us when we were going to have a Python SDK, so we're super excited to have this out now. And what the SDKs allow you to do is just, they provide a way for you to think about your code in an ordered fashion for handling these JSON objects that are coming in. It's not a requirement. You don't have to use them, but they're going to make your life easier. Just like the CLI, once you learn how to use them, they're going to make you so much quicker. You don't have to write all this boilerplate code. You're not reinventing the wheel every time. You can even take some code from a different skill and move it over in a clean fashion.
Now, if you were building skills last year or even early this year, you were probably using an SDK.
Yep.
And it was probably a different SDK than the one we have now. We recently released this. I don't even know, May, something like that.
Yeah.
It's a big difference. It's a big change in a good way. Like, there was a lot of learning that happened from all the different large partners that we have building really deep, complex skills. And sort of the old SDK is great to a point, but then you sort of lose it, right? And you sort of lose the plot, as my friends in the EU would say. And so this one has a lot more focus on like taking that situation, like here's what was said, and now I can handle it. Versus the other, which was very intent focused and didn't really have the full situation involved.
Yes, and I think maybe that was what inspired you for the situational design thing, right? Because it allows you to just say, okay, this event that's coming in, where does it match to? But the intent is just one of the things that is there.
Yeah.
You could care about, is it account linked or is it not? So
That's
what?
cross-identity.
Yep. Yeah. So what we're doing for that is we have the concept of a can handle. Or handlers for each of your situations, not for an intent specifically, but for a situation.
Yep.
So you can say, okay, if I don't have this access token that I would get if the account's been linked, do this thing. If I don't have the right permissions to get the user's zip code, do this other thing.
Yep.
And those are not
Or
really...
if I heard help in the middle of a game,
Yes.
Versus at the beginning of the game.
Yes,
I could do something different.
Yeah, so you could add your own little variables or flags in there and say, I know the user's playing the game right now, so if they say help, they want that's specific,
Very
like
different,
route it here. Or I know the user's never played this game, and if they say help, they probably want a little briefing of what's happening. Or this is a count of how many times my user's been here. I'm gonna trim everything down, make it real snappy. Or this user I haven't seen in 6 months, so I'm gonna say, hey, check out these new features. Bam, bam, bam. Right?
Yep.
And you don't want to have that same behavior for everybody, because then you're teaching your users, hey, you can ignore this safely because I'm just repeating myself like a parrot.
So one of the patterns there is this sort of lock and key pattern.
Yep.
Where basically, metaphorically, there's a lock that you have to get through. So like dungeon crawlers will have this, where like there's a room I can't get to until I defeat a monster, or there's a chest I can't open until I have a key,
Yep.
or somehow I can't progress. Like I can't book the trip until I've planned the trip. So it's sort of a lock and key metaphor. And in this world, you can say, if they say open without a key, this is what we do. If they say open with a key, this is what we do.
And then you don't have to have your logic is less nested.
Yeah.
You have your logic more at a single layer, which is nice for complexity because you're not diving into corner case after corner case and I changed it here but I didn't change it there. And
Totally.
All those little things.
So I would encourage you, if you built something with the SDK a year ago, go build a new skill. Just go build something simple, the fact skill, the trivia skill. Just go see it, see how it kind of works, and reorient yourself to it. But take the moment to do that, because keep working with the old SDK for your current skills. That's fine. But when you go on to build your next skill, you will kind of want to dive into the new SDK.
Yeah.
It'll also help you a lot, by the way, with in-skill purchasing.
Yeah.
That's kind of where you got to go for that.
Yeah.
So.
And the CLI will also help with, that's the way you get to in-skill purchasing. So all these advanced features, you probably want to use these tools. Again, it's not required, but it's going to make your life a million times easier. Yep. So we definitely recommend
I think it was 999,000 times easier.
Another big piece of developing something, of the actual tooling, is being able to test. And we have a simulator that's built into the developer console, and like we said, the way to get to that console is developer.amazon.com, and it's all basically a web-based device that allows you to either type in commands or say commands to it, and it's constantly getting better. It gives you a lot more detail than you would ever get from a real device.
Yep.
You can see the actual JSON objects, which one went to the service, which one came back from your Lambda, do all these different things. So it's really, really cool. It's really neat. I like the fact that you can hear the response, read the response, see the JSON object. You can type something in, you can say something, so you can be very granular with your testing. But it behaves like a regular old device. And if we can't show you the code, but under the hood, it's built like a device.
Yeah.
Like it looks like a device to the service. So that was really important for us, because it also allows us to maintain some parity there and not fork how things are behaving. We've recently added support for displays, so you can also see how something would be displayed on an Echo Show and a Spot. So that's also very, very cool. If you want to take an extra layer or go a layer down, there's the device logs, and you can see every event that's coming in there, not just the two main events. Especially if you're doing things with AVS, like you're building your own devices, that'll give you some extra information for that.
So I got a pro tip.
Yep.
Wait, are you the pro or am I the pro?
You're the pro.
I'm the pro!
You're wearing the shirt and everything.
Crud, I wasn't prepared for that. Thanks. In that tool, it sort of looks like speech bubbles going back and forth as you're typing.
Yep.
And as you're typing and going through it and seeing the speech bubbles, you're seeing those responses like you were describing. If you go back and click on any of the previous bubbles, you can see the details of the response for those previous bubbles.
As long as you're clicking the blue bubbles that are
blue bubbles,
the response from Alexa.
Yep.
It'll basically let you navigate like a timeline, right?
Yeah.
You can see like, oh, this event happened, and then this event happened, and then this event happened, and what the response is. So it'll allow you to get a lot more information for that. So we definitely encourage you to do that. And then beta testing, right? That is super, super important. There's a beta testing tool as part of the console. So before you're ready to ship your code, before you're ready to start really using or putting it in front of real customers, you probably want to get some people to test it, especially to find those blind spots. Blind spots it's hard to find your own, so you want to get more people in there giving you their opinion. So check out the beta testing tool. It's all the way after you've built everything. It's under launch. You got to make sure you fill out everything in there, just like the skill's ready to be deployed, shipped. And then you can do beta testing.
Yep.
Up to 500 people, if I'm not mistaken,
90
and up
days.
to 90 days. So it's really a handy tool.
One more pro tip. Do you know it?
Yeah, the email, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ah, you did know it.
So
there's a link you could just mail to everybody. So
Yeah.
there's a button you can hit to hit mail, and that'll go. Amazon will mail it out for you. And that goes to everybody who wants to get Amazon emails.
Yes.
But not to people who don't want to get Amazon emails.
Yeah. So if someone has like a spam filter that's grabbing everything from Amazon, or they've gone into the Amazon portal and said, I don't want to get any emails from Amazon, we're gonna respect that. Like the user said this, they don't want it.
Totally.
But you can just copy the email. It's gonna give you a link that you can just send from your personal email. You can text it to your friends, whatever you want to do. And as long as their account is in your beta testing,
Like you approve them.
yeah,
Right.
they can get access to it. If you send it to the wrong person by mistake, they just won't be able to do
won't use
anything with it. But that's a really important one as well.
Cool. All right. So
So the last thing that we wanted to talk about testing with, or one of the last things we wanted to talk about testing for was using the Lambda console. So if you go to Lambda and you're building your code in Lambda, you can find a little field at the top that says configure test events. And if you select one of those test events, you can then put JSON in there to simulate the Alexa service. So if you want to test something specific, you can grab. You can even grab the JSON from the simulator and say, this is throwing an error. I want to see my stack trace. I want to see exactly what's happening. You can grab that, put it in those test events, send it in, and it's going to behave just like it got that event from the Alexa service. And it gives you, oh, there's a syntax error. You forgot to put a comma here. Or memo, once again, you're trying to do ES6 and you don't know what you're doing.
And so this one's really nice to separate, right? Like you're saying, in the simulator you're testing the entire stack.
Yes.
And in this you're forgetting about all the Alexa service and all this stuff. You're just saying I'm testing my code.
Yeah.
And that allows you to get right in
And
there.
it's a really worthwhile distinction because by doing it that way, you can get yourself into situations that are not attainable from the UI. You're fiddling with the code directly, right?
Yeah.
So if you send an event, it could just be like an intent that never went through launch, that never was a new request. So be mindful of that, but it's extremely powerful. It's very, very useful.
Yep, totally.
As we talk about testing, something that we want to highlight is automation. So being able to test things automatedly, and this is something that we're trying to do more about. If you go to the link there, we have a few resources, both internal, external, some tools that we put together, some tools from different companies that are doing really great things.
Yep. Shout out to Bespoken.
Yeah,
John Kelvy.
Yeah. So John Kelvy from Bespoken is doing amazing stuff there. He wrote a blog post, a guest blog post for our blog. So check that out. See how you can automate some of these tests. Run some of those tests for you. I think a lot of what he's doing is based off the underlying tech for the CLI. So it's definitely worth a look. So after this, what we're gonna talk about is we're gonna switch gears a little bit and stop talking about just building and move along the life cycle of our skill, right?
Cool. Yeah, so let's talk about launching. You've got your skill now designed well.
Mm-hmm.
You've got your skill built and tested, and you're thinking that's all good. Now we got to launch it. And so what I really want to focus on here is help you get through the process quickly and easily, and just get running through the process. So let's go to the first one. So a couple bits here. One is certification. So we have this process where you submit your skill, and then it runs through a certification process, and then it will go live. And once it's live, it's available for anybody to go use. So while you're building it, you can use it and use it on your device. And then once you get it certified, now it's available to anybody. There are a few key things that you should keep in mind for certification. The first is we've just recently added some new features around allowing you to do pre-certification inside of the dev console you were talking about. So there you can run through and it'll do obvious errors like there's a functional break or some command doesn't work or something like that. So it's hitting the basic things and it's telling you right then, you got an error right now. You don't even have to submit.
Yeah, and I think it's important because a lot of people would get rejected for silly things like, oh, I changed my invocation name at the last minute, but I didn't change my example phrases.
Right.
So it's just like metadata mismatch, basically, but you forgot because they're on 2 separate tabs, and now you're gonna wait 2 days to here's your silly mistake.
Right.
So now all this will help you with that.
Yeah, absolutely. So you spoke about example phrases. Example phrases are the things where in our marketing of your skill, you'll see things that say like, Alexa, open thunder sounds, right?
Yep.
And so it kind of tells you what to do and how to use it, and it gives the person a little sense of what's going on. And so you have to create those example phrases.
Yep.
Be sure to create them correctly. Like they actually should use your real invocation name. They should actually use utterances that you really have.
Yeah, pro tip.
The pro tip. Yeah, because as you were saying before, it's all based on training data.
Yep.
And so you could be testing all day long with an utterance that works great and you love it because it's very natural to you, but you didn't actually put it in your voice model, into your interaction model. For these example phrases, they've got to be there.
Yep.
Like you got to have them connected. So get that right. We've also added new features recently. If you haven't used that in a few months, there's new features there to really help you tell and to recommend different example phrases. So hopefully that'll be more straightforward for folks.
Yep.
Invocation names. So one of the things to think about invocation name, well, there's some rules about it for certification. There's some design best practices too. The rules around like it's got to be multiple words, 2 to 4 words, not one word. And there's certain keywords that you can't have in it, like Alexa, for example.
Yep.
There's a few other there. So there's on this link here, certification tips. It'll walk you through
the do's and don'ts.
The do's and don'ts
Yep.
for that. The other thing to think about with invocation phrase is you want it to fit naturally into the flow of your skill. It's a part of the user experience, right? So you might say, Alexa, reorder pizza from Domino's, right? And so Domino's is my invocation name. I put it at the end. I could have said open Domino's Pizza and reorder Domino's Pizza, right? So just thinking about that and thinking about it in the context with your utterances is important. Okay, so another thing for certification is intellectual property. So intellectual property is where somebody creates something, somebody creates a character or a brand, and I'm not going to give you a list, but like you know what I'm saying, like brands and so forth. You can't just go make a skill for that brand.
Correct.
The brand has to authorize you to do that and give you a
Yes.
license to do that and so forth.
And if you want to do something like as a fan, you can definitely do it. Just call it unofficial, or don't use their brand name. Use something that's you're allowed to use.
Right. There can be no confusion in the customer's mind
Yes.
that they're getting the official thing or just some sort of fan thing, right?
Correct.
It's got to be super, super clear.
Correct.
So, yeah, you got to own the IP. And there's process you can go through to say, I actually own this IP, right? And you can work through that.
Yep.
Another common thing in certification is session management. So session management is, let me give you 2 examples. One is I just have tell me a joke, I get the joke, done, right? So that's a one-turn kind of a skill.
Yep. Ends the session.
It ends the session. Another kind of skill is where, like we were planning that trip earlier.
Yep.
I say something back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And so that's when you're keeping the session open.
Correct.
And properly keeping the session open and closed is actually really important.
Yeah.
The really simple litmus test for you is whenever you have a question mark, you should leave it open. And whenever you don't have a question mark, you should probably close it.
Yep.
Right?
And I think it's more common that people leave the session open when they don't mean to, than the other way around. Because
Well, I've seen it for help. Like people will say, it's a pretty common failure actually in that. So it goes both ways, but you're right. But like people say, oh, I want to ask for help. And
Yeah.
you get the help and then you end the session.
yeah.
And now it's
True.
it's done. So.
Yeah, and for keeping the session open, just think about the customer experience. Like you're listening to them after they think you're not listening to them anymore. So we want to be really mindful about that. We don't want to inadvertently keep responding to the customer and they're confused. They don't know what's happening. So
Yep.
just if you're signaling that the session's done, just end it.
Totally. In the new SDK, if you haven't seen it yet, there's the response builder, the part where you're building out the prompts that Alexa's going to say back from the customer. The way you can tell if the session's open or closed, there's in the response builder there's a .speak, and then you say something. So that's what Alexa's going to say. And then there's another one called .reprompt, and that's where if Alexa says something and the customer doesn't say anything at all for like 8 seconds, then it'll reprompt and say a little bit more.
Yep.
If you have the reprompt, it's going to keep the session open.
Yeah.
If you don't have the reprompt, session's over.
And for reprompt, again, going a little bit back to design, it's usually a good practice to not have the exact same sentence as your prompt and as your
Variability.
reprompt.
Yep.
It's kind of a little bit, at least a little bit different. In one of a couple of our samples, we just have the same variable in there, and I've seen this over and over where I'm like, that's not great.
So like, for example, in that trip planning thing, you say, where do you want to go is your prompt. But then your reprompt might be like, which city would you like to travel to?
Exactly.
And so it just gives you a chance to, maybe the customer didn't quite understand what you're asking, and you can be more clear.
Clarify it.
Right. Okay. The other part to know about certification is that one of the things we want you to be able to do is improve your skill quickly all the time. And one technique for doing that is to use slot values.
Yep.
So, we were talking earlier on, it was like, well, let me give you just a new example. So there's an example in slot values where you could say something like, I want to have a chicken burrito for lunch, or I want to have a hamburger for lunch, or I want to have french fries for lunch. So there's like lunch food is the slot. If later I decide I want pizza and I didn't think of it in the very beginning of it, people are asking for pizza all the time.
Yep.
I could be registering, hey, I'm hearing a lot of pizza. I'm going to add that feature. In your interaction model and through certification, you can add slot values. So you just add slot values, recertify, and that certification goes very quickly.
Yeah, I think it's hours.
It's hours, yeah. If you only update your slot values, it's really fast. So definitely think about using slots and entity resolution and things like that, and then being able to update quickly that way.
And I think the world-renowned skill builder Jeff Blankenberg has done this kind of stuff for the skill that our team is collaborating on, dev tips, right?
Yep.
So he adds slot values a lot to keep those interactions really fresh.
Yep. Cool. Languages. So now we're talking about launching, and we're a lot talking about launching internationally.
Yep.
And you want to think about what languages you can go off and support. So
And Prime Day is a worldwide thing. It's not just a US thing, right? So if you have a skill that's in multiple languages, you're going to have customers in multiple languages coming at it.
Yep. So one way to think about this is there's specific places. So you can have English, which is a language, and then a place, so like the US or the EU or Australia or whatnot. So you would have English around the world and then English in places. And you could be different. Like you could say things a little bit differently if you were in Australia or the EU.
And the voice of the service is a little bit different. It's customized for each of those locales. So
yeah, that's built in for you. Yep.
US, UK, India, Canada, Australia, they're all a little bit different. It's still English. The models are also a little bit different because people speak differently there.
Yeah, you should make them a little different. You could choose to make them different. Beyond that, you can go German, Japanese, and we just announced Spanish, French, and Italian.
Yeah, and France a little bit ahead of the other two, but you can already build skills for all of those three languages.
Right, there aren't customers there yet. This is like get ahead of it, get in really early, and then like this is the preview moment where the developers have access, but customers don't yet. So for all of these, I think the main thing I would encourage you to do and to think about for languages is that this is not as straightforward as you would think for a website or a mobile page, where in a website or mobile page, you can take commands and translate those commands, and even auto-translation will sometimes work, right? Like for okay or whatever.
Okay, yes, no, all of those. Like if you just had buttons on your UI that just were all yes, no, okay, submit, you could Google Translate that, and
like your summary text would look bad, but like these other things would
it wouldn't be great, but it could be passable. For voice,
don't do that. Like this is the words that you use are your design, right? This is it needs to be the way people think and talk and explain things. So
as a Spanish speaker, I would never expect my users in Spain or to use the same invocation name as my clients in the US, because it's one's words in English, the other one would be words in Spanish.
Totally.
So you can have your own invocation name for each of those, and you would need to have your own models, like once you're going completely different languages.
Totally.
Not to even mention Japanese, where you're like it's a whole different ballgame, right?
Yeah. So to facilitate that, in the dev portal, that console that you were talking about where you can build your interaction model, there are tabs. You say, hey, I want more languages, and it'll give you another tab, and then you can just start filling that out, and you can have whatever you want to be the same can be the same where it makes sense, and you can make everything different where you want it to be different.
Yeah, and quick reminder, it might not look like it, but every link down here for every slide is related to the points we're making. So if you want to go and learn more about it, you can find more resources there.
Yep. All right, let's go down to the latency point. So now you've got your skill, and it's awesome, and it's cool, and makes sense in these other regions or other languages. But you want to make sure that it's high speed, low drag, right? You want it to come back fast. So
Paul Cutzinger.
Kick the tires, light the fires.
has 2 catchphrases.
For latency, you need to think about your endpoint. So like, let's just take just English for just a second, just to simplify the whole problem down. Just English, but I want it to be around the world English. You can use one endpoint by default and just say everything's going to hit Northern Virginia.
Yep.
And then that's awesome for everybody in the US, but it's not great for everybody around. Maybe your skill is so wicked fast it doesn't matter.
It could be fine, right?
Right. So the way you tell that is in your response. So you're looking in the console and you're testing it. In the response, it'll say how many milliseconds it took you to respond.
Yep.
And you can test that in all sorts of situations and see what it's looking like.
Yep.
Now, probably a better thing to do is to take your code and say, okay, I've got my Northern Virginia endpoint, my Ireland endpoint, my Oregon one. For Japan, you go to Tokyo. And so you can just work on making those great.
Yeah, and so those are the regions that you just listed where the Alexa voice service is deployed to in AWS. So in Lambda, you can say, okay, I just want to replicate the exact same code in all these regions, but then you're also helping spread the load.
Right. Cool. So, where are we at here?
Infrastructure.
Infrastructure. Okay. The other part is, particularly with Prime Day,
yes,
but also with new country launches, and also if your skill takes off,
yep,
right? Or if our marketing team gets a hold of it and says
they find it and they love it,
right? There's a bunch of different ways that your skill will just get load.
Yeah,
right.
A lot of customers very quickly.
So what you need to do is think about a few different things, particularly on your back end, your business logic side. We'll give you some tips for how to use AWS to that scaling if you're using your own servers. These are all, by the way, very typical like load management kinds of.
Conceptually, it's the same. We're just going to tell you how to do it in AWS specific terms.
Yep, the common thing. So one is for your Lambda function. Remember, it's serverless, and so there's people hitting it.
Yep.
But there could be lots of skills hitting at the same time. So you just need to increase your concurrent execution limit.
Yeah, and I think the default, AWS increased a little while ago, but once you're going, like you're going to actually go and market this skill and put a bunch of effort behind it, you can cut a ticket to them to increase it even more.
Oh, I see. Great. So for all of these, you can start putting CloudWatch alarms around it and sort of saying, does this matter to me or not?
Yeah.
The Lambda function timeout. So what will happen is your Lambda function is sitting there, and somebody hits it, it wakes up, it does its thing.
Yep.
And then after a little bit of time, it'll close down. The default on that is 3 seconds.
Yep.
And then another one will fire up, and then another one will fire up. Now, if you extend that, you can extend it to like 5 minutes if you really wanted to. This is, by the way, this is not the time that it takes for your skill interaction. Your skill interaction could go for hours.
Yeah.
Because it's just going, I'm hitting Lambda function, I'm hitting Lambda function. It's just that instance.
Every time it hits, you only have that little 7-second window.
Yeah. So just increase that to 7 seconds or so. It
Yep.
seems like 7 seconds is a good way to get us over the vast majority of everything that people do with
the way I like to do it is when I'm testing, when I'm just debugging things, I'll drop my Lambda timeout as low as I can, just so I know like where the ragged edge of things is. Like if like you're doing things within 2-second window, like I know I'm in good shape. But when I'm gonna go live, I'm like, all right, 7 seconds, gonna give me some extra breathing room. But when I'm engineering things, I want to have as little engineering room to force me to be efficient. But then in production, I don't need to be forcing myself to do that.
The common bug that you'll run into in this place is you're making an API call, and the API call takes 3, 4, 5, 10, 20, 30 seconds to return. And so, if your experience requires the 30 seconds to return, it'll work. You're going to have to extend your Lambda function to be able to handle that kind of time. It might be a really bad user experience. You're going to have to think a lot about how to say, hey, chill for a minute, we're coming back.
And that's the number one way to break a conversation, right?
Yeah.
Insert a 10-second pause in there, conversation done. So that's not a good design thing, but you can engineer your way out of it.
Yep. Did I break the conversation? I was trying. I probably went for 2 seconds. I couldn't hold 10.
I couldn't
All
hold it either.
So the next one is with your Lambda function. Increase your memory allocation, particularly if you're using Java.
Yeah.
Java, you're gonna need more memory. So if you see that things, that's another way to improve the speed of it and all that kind of stuff, is to give it a little more headroom.
Yeah, I think the default's 128. For Java, you want to go 512.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. All right. Then through all of this, CloudWatch, like get alarms for all these different pieces.
And that's like, it's key, right? Like you don't want to find out that your skill is broken a month later when you're like, oh, what happened a month ago? You want to get alarms, text messages, whatever, when it's like, okay, you're at 80% of your capacity here, like something's happening.
Yep.
So you can proactively start like adding more capacity and not lose customers. Because the quickest path to a 1-star review is making something people love and then taking it away from them.
Yeah, totally. The last one here is if you're using DynamoDB for persistence or memory and these kinds of things, the start is like 5 read writes or something like that per second. So you might want to bump that limit up too. And I think there actually is now a new feature that will do scaling for that. So you can turn on scaling for DynamoDB and just start going up and down.
Yeah, and that's definitely super, super worth the effort.
What number are we on?
701.
Okay. Cool.
So what we just talked about was launching your skill. We talked about designing it and building it. Now what we want to do is talk about how do you keep your users engaged, keep them coming back, using a lot of stuff. And all your users, international users, you have a bunch of users now because you know how to scale. So let's start talking about.
We started out with a small idea.
Well, we're gonna start talking about this, but we're gonna let John introduce us first and talk a little bit about his experience and with what he's been building and how he makes it engaging.
We started out with a small idea to create the world's first interactive radio drama. If you can imagine you're listening to an audiobook or you're listening to a radio play, but the difference is you're a character. You use your voice to path one way or the other by saying this or that. That's what an earplay is.
You've only got time for one question. Do you ask, what is this? Who are you? Or why me?
What is this?
It's dangerous.
We were mobile first to begin with. What happened is I got an Alexa. I remember, I told my team, okay, I think we're going to make a pivot here. I think we're going to focus on Alexa. It took us just a weekend to take what we've been creating for a while, our content, and make it live and available on an Alexa device. There was an interesting magic that occurred when you could be hands-free and eyes-free and just move around in the room and hear a story and be a part of it. And from that moment, we knew we had to shift over and become voice first and not just mobile first. As a result of the shift to voice, we've reached a much, much broader audience than we ever thought was possible. That is a much bigger future than anything that I had originally expected.
All right.
So part of what we heard there is being able to use your skill in a natural way. So it makes it easier for your users to come back to it. So if it's something that I will just naturally say, I'm going to remember how to say it because I have that idea in my brain. If you're making it really hard to say, you're going to have a hard time having people remember exactly what you want them to say because that's just not how people speak. They'll have an idea and then their own language model in their brain will spit out a sentence. So being able to say that and one of the good ways or the things we wanted to highlight was using the launch phrases. So just your skill, the user can say device, open, whatever. And I'm being mindful because we've been called out about triggering multiple devices. So I'm going to try to keep the wake words at a limit. But it might not be the most natural way for someone to say open car sharing. You might want to say, hey, ask the car sharing service for a car.
Yep.
So that's a more natural sentence. You mentioned it earlier with Domino's Pizza where you're flipping it around and you're saying, get me a pizza from, and then invocation name. But the components of the sentence don't vary, don't change.
Yep. So there's a few ways that we try to make this whole thing feel really natural. One is, let me just bust through a couple of them real quick. One is you don't have to say enable. You don't have to go to the app to enable for all the skills. You can just say, boom, 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 Alexa, open CompoBot.
Yeah.
I had to do it. And then, but you can also say things like, let's play a game.
Yeah, and I think that goes back to what we have down here, which is name-free invocation.
Yep.
Where we can get the skill triggered without having to say that invocation name precisely. So play a game.
Right.
And it'll suggest some games, or it'll trigger a game, or if you just say the name of you say the invocation name, you've never enabled it, it's the first time you hear about it, and you say, Alexa, open the box of cats. You're welcome. And it'll start working immediately. You don't have to install anything. It's immediately there. It's really snappy. So having those things, or being mindful of how people can engage with it, is also going to affect what utterances you have, what invocation name you choose, and making these sentences really, really valuable, right?
Yep. There's a couple other pieces under the hood. There's one technology called Shortlister. These are both ML things. So one is called Shortlister, which is really about picking the It's really about picking the right sort of skills, like give them onto a short list. So it's just picking the most appropriate skills. And there's another one called HypeRank, and that's where we will take it and we will re-rank the list and prioritize it. So the first one classifies them and says, oh, this is a skill like this.
Yep.
And this is what the user might want. The second one says, let's order it and give you the best fit.
And it also has to do with understanding the customer, right? It's related to, you've used this skill, so you might want this other skill. What you might want to look at for that is the can fulfill intent.
Yep.
If you look for if you Google that, Alexa can fulfill, we have some blog posts and some technical documentation about that, and how you can say, hey, my skill can do this thing, or my skill can do this other thing, and then the user, we remove the need from the user having say that invocation name. It's more based on utterances and what they've done before and what they're trying to do, context based. But you get this almost for free in a sense, because the Alexa service is where this Shortlister and HypeRank and all that live, and we're looking at the skills at an extra layer of ML-ness.
And so the signals you can provide, there's really two big ones. One is your keywords, your short descriptions, and your categories. So those all feed into these systems and give it a sense of what your skill can do. And then the one you mentioned, the can fulfill intent, is Alexa will say, can you do this? And your skill will go, yep, I can do this, or maybe, or no, I can't. And then you feed the engine.
And I think that's really valuable, being able to say, no, I can't. Because if you say yes and you give the customer a bad experience, you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot.
Well, in a couple ways. One is it's bad for the customer and they won't like your skill anymore. The other is the system will learn from that.
Mm-hmm.
So you want to be precise in your can I fulfill this? Because the more you say you can do it and you succeed, the better.
Yeah, and the other way around, the more you say yes, but you actually don't do it,
then the system will learn.
The system will be like, oh, this skill is just lying to me, and they'll learn.
Right.
So it's another way you're training, you're doing a training data for a machine learning system.
Exactly.
So another really important part about this, and we're almost, I think the connective tissue among all these things is metadata, right? The once you're done with your skill, you're gonna add these flourishes of can fulfill as an extra layer. Another extra layer is promoting your skill. Mm-hmm. So being able to say, hey, I want to get featured, or want to get more ears. I was gonna say eyeballs, but no, you want to get ears on your skill. So you want to optimize your invocation name, and we kind of hammered on that for a little bit. But you also want to optimize your skill name, and your skill name is what the user will see on the web page or the app when they're looking at the skill, and they'll read it. So it doesn't have to match identically. So you have a little bit of freedom there for your promotional information, but also your description. Make sure it's interesting, it's engaging, it describes what your skill does. You'd be surprised how many people have a hard time with this. Like, just tell me what the skill does in a succinct, clear way, and it's more likely that I'll test it. If I don't know what it does, I'm like, well, all right, cool logo, man.
I think this is common across all sorts of creative endeavors, right? You want to make it work. Yay, it works. Like book authors, they want to write the book. Yay, the book is done. But you got to do the jacket. Like you got to get the thing. You got to do the album art. You've got to
take the picture.
You got to take the picture. Very studious.
The far away look, as Paul likes to refer to it. Make sure you have an icon there. I wouldn't. If you're crunched for time and you're like, I can either spend time on my invocation name or my icon. I'm gonna say invocation name every time. But once you have a little bit more time, definitely take a look at your icon. Make it stand out, make it look good, because people will see that. So come back to it and check it out. Use the beta testing tool. Make sure you get as many people as you can on there. A few of us, I know Dave, I know Jeff, on Twitter will test skills when people hit them up on Twitter.
Yeah.
And give them some feedback or say like, yeah, this is what it looks like on this new device that you might not have, but we happen to have. So find beta testers. And I mentioned Twitter because there's a whole community. If you look at the hashtag VoiceFirst, or if you follow any of us, there's a whole community of skill builders, and they're super supportive, and we definitely want to shout them out. So you can find some beta testers there. And then spread the word. Tweet about it, maybe write a blog post, get more people involved in there. Talk about your skill. It's not just going to happen magically, but you can do a lot of things to do this. And there's a few resources to get you started. So we have a PowerPoint template, and we have a Photoshop template that'll allow you to create some promotional material for your skill that you can use in your social platforms later.
Cool.
So we've talked about promotion. The next thing is choosing your skill idea.
Yep.
And
particularly around habitual, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
So it's something that's gonna have your users coming back to it. It's not something they're just gonna use once and gonna forget about. So there's a whole guide that Jeff, once again, star of the show, has produced. There's 10 things that a skill should do well. And if you follow those guidelines, you're gonna end up with something that is engaging and habit forming. And usually habit forming is a bad thing, but for skills, it's a really good thing. You want people coming back to it because they find it useful, because it's giving them value.
Sure. Real quick, on the Jeff thing. So Jeff is there in chat. We aren't able to see chat because we've got like 8 monitors going here and all sorts of stuff. But he's there feeding us questions whenever he can and answering your questions. So I think it would be fun to overload him, because he's over there saying it's simple. He's
Thank
like,
you, Paul.
I'm only using my left hand.
He was just.
And so I think that we need to engage Jeff's right hand.
Yeah, he just told us he was playing a game with his phone on one hand and answering questions with the other. So.
That's right. So speaking of left-handed, real quick, I used to play racquetball with my grandfather. And I mean, this is like,
all great stories start like that.
This is college, right? So I'm like the prime of my life. Like now I'm way down from there, right? College is great. I don't know if I was ever the prime, but hey, anyway, he would destroy me, like wear me out, destroy me. Like he's standing there in the middle and I'm running all over, exhausted, destroyed, like no points, right? So I'm like, I'm gonna take a class. I'm gonna learn to play racquetball. And I did it. I'm racquetball the semester. I'm like, I'm gonna beat my grandpa. Like it was my whole life's mission.
Cue Paul montage.
Oh,
running up the stairs like
sweatband on, the whole thing. So then I go back and we play, and it's him and then me and him and me. And I'm like, oh my god, I made a point. We're going back and forth. He goes, you're getting a lot better. Like he's like a little moment of respect, and then he switched hands. Destroyed me, wore me out, no more points. It was over.
He'd been playing left-handed.
He'd been playing right-handed, but he was left-handed. So yeah, it was dead. So anyway, that's Jeff on the mod board over there. He's running left-handed right now, and now hopefully we can engage his right hand.
Throw a couple curveballs at him.
Make it hard. All right, where are we at?
So we talked about habits. We have a few pointers for you there.
Yep.
And then we can move further and talk about retention. Which is keeping people engaged.
I don't know how many of your sort of audience are looking to actually build a business on Alexa, but I think that in business, for the most part, retention and engagement are king, right? I mean, like, you can't succeed as a company if you don't provide a lot of value for your customers, so that hopefully they'll pay you someday in some fashion. And it's really hard to provide a lot of value to customers if they only use something one time for 30 seconds.
All right.
So that was Max from Volley, and talking about how he and how they think about retention, and they've done some really interesting things. We're going to hear back from Max in a little bit, but being able to keep your customers coming back is the only way you're going to increase your user base. If you get a bunch of people through the door but they never come back, it's going to be hard for you to maintain, grow, and turn this into something that you're A, really proud of, and B, could become your whole business, your whole the way you sustain yourself.
There's a couple of features that you were messing with for habit forming. One of the water check stuff, where it's just like, come back every day, right? Do a little bit. We did in College Coach too. Just do a little bit. Leaderboards, streak counters, how often have you come?
And I think that's where you mentioned it earlier. Like, you don't want to just mirror something that you do from a graphical UI standpoint, but look at the concept behind it and say that's still useful. So leaderboards for games. I remember when like social games on social platforms came out, and I was like, these games are stupid. I want to play like hardcore games. And then I saw someone that I didn't like on my social board was higher ranked than me on some game, and I was like, all right, I'm gonna crush you. And like, I had,
was that my grandpa?
No.
Okay.
I had alarm set up at like 4 a.m., 7 a.m., 6 a.m.
You're like, I'm in there.
Yeah, I was super efficient, crushed them, and then I was like, all right, I'm out. But like, it was just seeing that little leaderboard triggered something in me that I was like, I'm gonna be super competitive now.
Yeah.
So there's all these different things that will drive engagement, will drive retention, and the more value you can add to your customer, the more you can actually show them what they want is going to be really important. Really, in voice, you want to be mindful of the cognitive overload. So just don't give your users a billion options. Simplify it for them. Understand where they are in their journey through your skill. Understand what the context of the conversation you were having, and give them really simple, clear options for them to talk to you.
Cool.
Obviously, being really aware of how users are engaging with your skill, understanding where the pitfalls or the friction is, discovering that is the best way to improve your skill. And we want to have more tools for you. In this case, I want to talk about two in general. One is user metrics, right? Like just top level, how many users do I have per day, per hour, at different time zones, in different languages. Understand where my users are coming from, maybe what the most popular intents are, all these things. Like if help is my most popular intent, it doesn't necessarily mean a bad thing, but probably I want to beef it up a little bit more, right? Like have it be more contextually aware. But we just released a new feature which allows you to see how, in a really cool graph, how users are moving through your skill. So that, to me, is a real good tool to find where your skill might have friction. So they all hit this intent and then they go to cancel, or they all hit this intent and never go beyond that. And you know from how you designed it, that's like a launching point, or this is the new feature. You might want to explore that intent specifically. What responses you're doing? Did you forget to keep the session open?
Totally.
Or another thing could be like this little intent that you didn't think was that big of a deal has all your traffic. It's like, oh, okay, that's how you achieve product market fit to be a BD for a second. That's where like the market's saying like, this is what we really want.
Totally. What I like about that is that it has 2 dimensions. It has what, like sort of this, then this, then this, and it also has a thickness. So it's like this percentage of your people went here and then here and here, and you can see what's big and little.
And it almost looks like an infographic where like someone designed it,
right?
But you have to look at it and really pay attention to it to see what's happening there, right? Like the thickness of the line is not just a whimsical thing. Right. Like it looks almost like silly, but it's not.
It's kind of like too pretty.
It's too pretty. Yeah, that's what I was trying to get to.
Okay.
So we're going to talk about setting goals. We're going to hear from Max again, and how they attack that and why it's a valuable resource for them.
Okay. So the next slide will do that.
You should have a goal that you can express at least in a number.
Yeah.
And like you will probably fail to achieve that initially.
Yep.
That's okay.
Yep.
But like you should at least know, like, I'm trying to get like the average user to use this 7 times or something.
Yeah.
That would be a really high achieving skill. Yeah.
Mm-hmm,
So what would be like your like, let's say, retention or engagement goal for this skill? Like, do you have a week 1 retention target in mind?
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a number of sessions per user in mind that you're going for?
Mm-hmm.
Do you just have a top line number of users you're going for? Like, I'll try not to boil everything down in numbers, but I do find it to be instructive to think about, like, what are we trying to achieve here?
All right, now we're going to transition a bit. So you've gotten what? You've got a well-designed skill.
Mm-hmm.
You've got it built.
Mm-hmm.
You've launched it.
You tested it.
Yep. And then you've been operating it, improving it, and all this kind of stuff. So another piece is, hey, let's make some money.
Yeah, you invested all this time, all this effort.
Right.
Let's get something from it.
Okay. So there's a few different ways that you can make money. One set of ways is through these different incentives. We have credits. Credits are where you can get AWS credits. Mm-hmm. So if you are an AWS user and you are an Alexa skill builder, we'll give you $100 a month to offset your costs. And frankly, most people don't pass the free tier anyway.
Yeah.
But if you get a $3 charge, a $5 charge, or $20, $30, $99 charge, then these credits would offset that.
And I was hanging out with the AWS people a couple weeks ago because we did a Twitch stream on building a Twitch extension that was voice enabled. Mm-hmm. And one of them was saying, like, oh, I'm out of APAC, and a bunch of the startups that I work with are run with under $100 a month, like startups.
The whole startup.
Yeah, not voice related. And he's like you could subsidize all these startups. So it's
but they have to use Alexa. So,
yeah.
The other part is there's these perks.
Mm-hmm.
So you can go out and, if you, it differs every month.
Yep.
But sometimes you get some socks, sometimes you get a device,
hats, backpacks,
shirts, and so forth. So,
not this shirt.
Did you have something there you want to say?
I don't.
Okay. Jeff looked over like with a great sigh of relief, like he cleared a backlog or something. But I thought he had something. Okay, so go there. You can check out the different promotions we might have and so forth. The other thing,
and those are monthly and different by country.
Yes, that's right. The next piece is contests. So we've run a few already this year. We'll run more. So there was a kids challenge.
Yep.
And it just goes through and a bunch of people submit skills and they talk about how they built them and see what's going on. And then there's winners. There's a whole bunch of people who get a little bit, and then there's somebody who wins a big prize.
And we featured the Kids Skill winner, or one of the top ones there earlier in the show.
There was Kids Court was there. It was a really cool one. Life Hacks is another contest that we recently ran. Had a couple of really cool skills out there. One was you can a child could text with their parents, which was pretty cool.
Via voice, yep.
Another was like a chop skill where you could chop any vegetable or fruit.
Yep.
And it's really engaging and fun, so I like that one. Chop is good. Okay, so that's credits, perks, contests. But then the next part is there's these developer rewards. So there we go. Once you get your skill in a way that is like exciting and great and works really well, then you can get rewarded just because it's engaging.
Yeah, and I want to stress the point here that this is money that's coming from the Alexa team for engaging skills. These are free skills. The users, the customers aren't paying for them. This is just something that our team feels we're going to reward really good skills on.
If customers love it, that's a great day.
Yes.
So, work on engaging. Now, the link on this says alexa.design/social, but it really should be alexa.design/rewards.
Okay.
So alexa.design/rewards. So with this one, Tom Hewitson he actually started a company based off of this. So let's take a look at his video.
I wanted to learn what you could do with the Alexa Skills Kit. I wanted to see what was possible. I created Would You Rather just because I was trying to learn. Then I got a phone call and it was like, did you know that this is one of the most successful Alexa skills and we're going to pay you money for it? My background is as a designer. I would never call myself a developer. My two biggest skills are a game called Would You Rather, and the other one is a game called True or False. We keep seeing people coming back again and again because they find those experiences valuable. And then I started thinking there might be a real business in building Alexa skills. So I hired another developer and then a business person to support me, and then two further developers, and now another content person and another conversation designer. The rewards program made everything possible. You asked me a year ago if I was going to end up here, and I would not have predicted it.
Okay. It's pretty inspiring. I think there's a lot of potential here, a lot of new things sort of coming together. The next phase is actual in-skill purchasing. So you build something, you build it in crazy, cool, compelling content.
And crazy is when it's incredible and crazy.
In crazy? Did I say in crazy? Yeah.
And this is something that's really near and dear to show MVP Jeff Blankenberg's heart.
Yeah.
It's in-skill purchases. There's a couple flavors of in-skill purchases. So
yeah, the first one is one-time purchases. Mm-hmm. The way to think about a one-time purchase is you're tooling along, you're experiencing the skill, and then you say, I want to unlock something. Like I want to unlock a level, I want to unlock a story, I want to unlock a feature.
An axe,
new questions. So this is something that you get and then you have enduring, right? You get to keep using it for the rest of time. You've unlocked it, you now have it.
A chapter in a book, a new book.
Exactly, it's yours. So with that, we want to talk to Max from Volley, and he'll show off a little bit of what they've been doing with this.
The thing about running a company is you always have to get to the next level. It's kind of like a game. We basically got started building mobile apps. While mobile is great and very easy to use, I still think voice is sort of at that next level of naturalism. Alexa, open Yes Sire. We have a number of the most popular games in the Alexa store, one being Yes Sire.
Shall we raise taxes, sire?
Yes. Our goal for our games is to build something that people can play for hundreds of hours, and that requires a significant investment in content and game design.
Should we surrender to save the fair maiden?
In-skill purchases and monetization allow us to make that investment. We started selling an expansion pack in Yes Sire, and we have been really, really excited to see how many people are converting to actually making the purchase. It is much, much higher than comparable mobile metrics, and we think that it bodes really well for the future of sustainable businesses on top of Alexa. The people who love playing Yes Sire have always wanted to play more. We have over 1,000 5-star reviews on Yes Sire, so it's really exciting to be able to provide that sort of expanded narrative experience to them. And they are happy to pay us for that because they want us to have a sustainable business so they can have more stories.
All right. So,
yeah, that's super cool being able to take that engagement and turn it into something very concrete that is also nice for your wallet is something I love to hear.
Well, and it's also cool because that's what customers want. They want more stuff, right? And I think customers respect that creating more great content is expensive.
Yeah.
We've certainly seen skills that people love. They get great ratings, but then they stop adding new content, and then your most loyal customers go, I love the skill, but they don't update it.
Yeah,
so
it used to be great, but now it sucks because I already consumed everything.
Right, and they turn on you. That's terrible. So this is a way to say, like, yeah, I'm going to keep giving you more stuff, and comes along with the purchasing. So the other way, that was one time. The other way to make purchases in a skills with a subscription.
Yeah.
So a subscription it recurs on a regular basis, monthly or yearly, something like that. And as long as you're a subscriber, you get to have it.
Yeah.
If you stop being a subscriber, it goes away.
Yes.
You no longer get it. So that's how that kind of works.
Yeah, and I wanted to mention a couple of things related to ISPs, which are a lot of the complexity of the billing and the recurring and how much it costs.
Even the UI.
Yeah, it's all handled by the service.
Right.
So you create your product and you say, this axe is worth 99 cents, and there's a bonus layer to that, which is if the customer is a Prime member, you don't need to know about it. Amazon knows about it. The customer gets a discount, and they hear about it like, oh, this is worth this much for you because you're a Prime customer. So,
and the discount, by the way, is not out of your part. So
it's
like,
not, yeah.
So like normally you have a dollar object, right? So you would get 70%, and Amazon gets 30%. If there's a discount, it comes out of the 30%, not out of the 70%.
Yeah. You as a developer, you get the same piece of it.
Right.
But the customer gets a discount, everybody's happy, you don't have to build logic and handle any of that. Same thing for recurring. If you say it's a weekly recurring or monthly recurring, you don't have to be checking your database. It's all happening. You just query the service and say, are they a subscriber? Yes, no, boom.
Yep. It's part of that situational design.
Yeah.
Do they have this pack? Great, let them in. If they don't have the pack, offer it.
I wonder what genius came up with situational design.
Blew my mind. Okay. Cool. So where are we at now? I think we're good with that.
So we're coming to an end for what we've done today.
A lot of what we're going to do, I don't want you to leave yet, because we've got some stuff. There's a few more slides, but they're all going to be about helping you find these resources.
Yeah,
I also want to bring Jeff over for a second. Everybody's got to see the man, the myth, the legend.
He took his glasses off, by the way. He wants to look young for you.
The only. All right, cool.
Hi, everybody.
So I had one question for you, Jeff.
Jeff Blankenberg.
Who the hell's moderating right now?
Yeah, if they're asking questions, who's answering?
No, they're self-moderating.
They're self-moderating. That's awesome. No, thank you very much for all the help.
Sure.
That's awesome.
Hi, everybody.
Hey, everybody. Okay, Jeff out.
Mic drop.
All right.
He kicks over the camera.
That was a ton of content.
Yeah.
So what we want to do right now is, I know you've been getting the links and getting a lot of questions answered along the way. Let's run through a few different ways that you can learn about this stuff, and then we'll also give you all the links so you can have
and how to find us as well.
Yeah, totally. We're here all the time, not just today, right now.
Yeah. So the first one is our blog. So the blog is a super good resource for a bunch of different types of content. One is it keeps you up to date with what have we launched. Is there a new country? Is there new devices? Is there new services? Is there a new API? All these different things. So you can find about all of those. Not only find out about those, but find about them first. That's the first place where we talk about them. That's where we make our big announcements. So
and we also showcase some of these, what the community's doing.
Yeah.
And you can kind of get a feel for what's happening there.
That's another big one. It's not just us. It's how people like John Calvi and
all the champions,
all the Alexa champions, all that. We give them a spot there to talk about their cool things. But we also have a lot of how-to deeply technical posts. So if you want to learn about the
account linking, dialog management,
or how the CAN handle works, or handling route handling it works, or doing dialog management at a really, really deep level, or that's where Jeff's guide for the 10 things to do kind of was born, and then we compiled it into a different document. So there's all these different things that we do there. If the team builds little tools, like I built my VOI testing tool, and we had a little blog post about it, all of that gets there. So the blog's a really good resource, and definitely check it out. Okay. We also have a newsletter, and the newsletter is huge. People love it. It's super popular. Email's making a comeback. Watch out, 2019 is the year of
We talk a lot about skills in the newsletter, like very specific skills, and showcase them and highlight them. So it's a great place to sort of see what's latest.
Yeah. And if you want to get a curated list of really good skills, high quality, that the team's looked at and really loves, the newsletter is a place to go, right? So we always have some skills there,
little dev tips, and all that stuff. Okay.
On social, so we're all over the place on Twitter. I was literally tweeting while we were doing this when you couldn't see me. So I did like a sneak peek picture, a behind the scenes picture. So we're always there. We love to engage with developers. I usually tell developers it's better, easier to find me on Twitter than to send me an email.
Absolutely.
Because my email inbox is always afire.
I have more unread emails than I have tweets.
Exactly. Same. Yeah. So definitely hit us up on Twitter, and even if we're flying or it's a Saturday or whatever, we might actually respond to that.
Or LinkedIn or Twitch or wherever, Facebook, wherever you find people.
Yeah. And Paul and I are very smart men, and we both have no creativity, so you can use the same username in every platform, right. And you can find us. So not hard. So, the next one is events.
Yep.
So people love to come to events, learn at events, meet us in person, get a bunch of really good knowledge. We love to have them because that's how we learn. Find out what's happening in the community, find out more about what they want. So we have a bunch of different events. You can find events near you in the link below. We have the Dev Day series, which is a worldwide big event. We love doing those. We'll be coming to the new countries that we've announced. We'll go back to cities that we've already done in the US. So keep an eye out for those.
These events, one thing to know about them is they are very deep and hands-on. We absolutely believe in letting you get in and use something and do it. Like, we talk a lot about mean time to voice. Like, how quickly can a participant hear Alexa saying what they wanted her to say?
Yes.
Right? So these are open your laptops, let's get started kind of events. They're not I guess we do 1 hour talks to say, hey, what's going on, but they're really like get hands-on and build stuff.
And if you see us at a conference, like if we're in the roster of a conference as a speaker, we're most likely going to be doing a talk. But if you're coming to an Alexa event that we're putting on, if it's a long event, what it means is like you're going to get your hands dirty with some code.
Yep.
It's going to be highly technical, and we love doing that. We love helping people at that.
And frankly, Twitch is the same way.
Yes.
This is actually, the way we're doing this today is a little bit of a rarity.
Yeah.
Where we're just doing like the best of, here's all the stuff that you want to know about. We really wanted to make sure that the context came together and you could have the resources you need. But most of our shows are like live coding.
Yeah, and if you go into the video section on Twitch, you can find, I think we have 82 or 83 videos there. Most of them are like Jeff and I writing some code, Paul and I writing code, other people from the team, Cami, Justin, Franklin,
Cassidy's there.
Kirsch,
Justin.
Kirsch, Glenn. So like we have a
Jed was there.
A pretty significant team. Oh, Ozzy, our evangelist from Australia, and Rob McCulley from Boston were there last night.
Mm-hmm.
Andrea Mutoni. So we have a global team, and we're trying to make Twitch this space where you can meet us, you can meet other like-minded developers. So a real community space where you can say like, hey, I have this question. We have office hours every Tuesday. So keep an eye out for that space. We do a lot of live coding. This is a weird session, but maybe we'll do more of these. Let us know if it's something you liked. We love engaging with the community. We love being silly, and like this is who we truly really are. If you meet us getting a bagel in Seattle, like we're gonna be the same, up to the same shenanigans. So
I'm 4 inches taller in person.
Yes, I'm actually. I don't have a beard in person.
You don't have a beard in person.
It's a prop.
It's really well done.
Okay. So that's what Twitch is. That's another place for events. The last thing we wanted to do is leave you with a really, really good quote from someone that was on our Twitch channel, and that's it. This is the last you're gonna hear from us. Thank you so much.
We have one more. Well, no. On the next slide, I don't think we're done.
Oh,
I think you got one more.
Jumping the gun?
You're jumping the gun.
I'm jumping the gun.
All right. Gun was jumped.
Sorry.
So the thing I want to make sure we called out was there were 2 links. One is all the links.
Yep.
So all the stuff, like basically Jeff didn't have to do any of that work. We could have just said all the links and it would have been done. But we enjoyed the Hands on Fire smoking computer. We thought that was awesome.
We could have just written a bot that just posted all the links.
Jeff Blakenberg. Jeff Bottenberg. So the other part is we have a survey, and we would really love it if you would fill out the survey. Let us know where Memo messed up and where I did a great job. and where we got this, or this
All of
reverse,
it.
all of it. Yeah, no, let us know what's going on. We really take feedback to heart. You go to the survey there, alexa.uservoice.com for feature requests.
And frankly, like the fact that we're on Twitch right now and we're doing more on Twitch is because you asked for it. You said, this is what we like, we enjoy this, so we're doing more. If there's something that we're missing, if there's something that you want to see, let us know. That's the quickest way to do it. Unfortunately, we can't hear what's in your mind yet, but we definitely want to hear what you have to say. Now, we're actually going to let you with a really cool quote. And I just want to say thank you.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure. We're almost at the 2-hour mark, and from what I hear, you all stuck around for the whole thing. So it's we really appreciate that. We love and understand that your time is valuable. So thanks again.
Thank you.
Not only do I think there'll be companies built, I think the companies will be the size of Pandora. Guys, Facebook, Instagram is worth $100 billion according to that last report. It's an iPhone app.
Yeah.
Nobody was talking that in 2007. Do I believe that there'll be a $100 billion business started by Sally and Susan from Tennessee right now, built on top of Alexa? $100 billion? The answer is yes. It will be the winner of some sort of entertainment or utility in voice form.